Well, I cannot believe this day has gone as well as it has. And now we're back with our last segment of the day. But don't worry, we will be back with more speakers tomorrow, epic speakers. And if you've missed any of the vignettes, even over the last 4 years that I've done, and now with Dr. Sean Drake, you can go back and watch them by going to f4cp.org/ChiroThon. And that's the time where you are welcome to donate.
I mean, you might see me on a couple of those, actually.
Yes, you
right? If you haven't got enough of me already. But as we start to wrap up the day, I'd like to provide you with our donation update because I want to say thank you. We just went over $20,000. We're at $20,100, so that is amazing. But we still have one last speaker right after this, and I want to try to get to 30,000 today. So if you can share this, if whatever you can donate, it's going to go a long way. It's going to help a lot of families. It's going to bring awareness. Again, our goal is 30K. I set 60. So if you guys could help us hit 30,000 in the next hour, that would be phenomenal.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, we could not have done this without our successful ChiroThon sponsorship. And we want to thank our generous sponsors. One particular is one that is NCMIC. They are proud to offer a wide array of insurance and financial products and services, as well as countless practice resources. For our chiropractors, they depend on it. Each one is designed to help their practice thrive, and you can always count on NCMIC as their commitment to the chiropractic profession. NCMIC is just more than an insurance company. They always have our back, and it's a malpractice insurance company that really does more for their policyholders. So let's have a opportunity to look at NCMIC.
All right, I'm really excited about our next speaker because we've been talking a lot today. So let's just recap the day so far, right? So we started this morning. We went from everything from concussion to longevity in a career, all the way to, what else? Soccer, hip pain. What you're realizing is that this is a whole body system. This is really looking at the true science and soul side of the body to help you heal, have a long life. And it goes beyond just the United States. We just learned that, right? So it's a whole global approach. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about is how do we take it from pain to performance in life? And that's what Dr. Ross Kees is going to be showing you on this next presentation. So if you are tired, get up, jump up, get some loud music going real quick. Stay tuned, watch this, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. It is such a pleasure to have you back, whether you're listening across the world or you're right here live on the ground. We cannot thank you enough for joining us during ChiroThon 2026. It has been a fabulous event so far, and the speakers just keep getting more and more exciting, and we've learned so much from a variety of different specialties and different sports and athletes. So now we're going to bring in one of my favorites. It is Dr. Ross Kees. Dr. Ross Kees is a sports chiropractor. He is focused on restoring function and building long-term resilience in active individuals and athletes. He actually helps his patients move beyond pain, which many of you come into chiropractic to see. He returns them to the meaningful activity with greater capacity and better durability. Now, he has served as the team chiropractor for National SC, working with a professional soccer environment and contributing to athletic care, recovery, and return to play processes. His experience in the demanding field of sports, such as repeated sprinting, cutting, and high load variability, shapes the clinical approach he uses to create injury management and performance readiness. His model of care emphasizes addressing underlying dysfunction while improving movement efficiency and, of course, progressing athletes towards sustainable performance. We're so delighted to have you, Dr. Kees. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a pleasure to be here and to, hopefully shed some light on chiropractic as, it pertains to sports especially.
Well, the light is on and we're ready to go. And we're excited that you have joined us because one of the things that many that are joining us right now, it may be the very first piece of ChiroThon that they have watched. We want them to come away really well educated. And many of them did not know that we, as chiropractors, are on professional fields all over the world, especially during FIFA. And I hope you're getting
Yeah.
excited because FIFA is going to be the most historic global event ever seen in the history of sports. So
Mhm.
let's start with this. How, Dr. Keys, do you define the role of chiropractic in modern sports performance and recovery?
So obviously biased, being a chiropractor and seeing the role of chiropractic in that, it can play a very critical role in the whole arena of sports performance and injury management, but it's not great alone. So it's best done when it's applied in that broader framework. The adjustments can, as we know, improve joint mechanics, reduce the pain. But if that's where the care stops, then the athlete's going to be underprepared. So throughout this whole thing, I mean, having a team around you, if you don't have the capabilities of doing certain things, having those people around you to help create a whole package for the athlete to get the chiropractic in there, then also some of the rehab type stuff, the soft tissue type things, as they all come together. The real value in chiropractic can be used as like an entry point to get someone in because it does such a great job of decreasing that pain and increasing range of motion. And we see it every single day with how quickly and how simply those adjustments can create immediate results. Then we can use that and progress it into more restoring the movement patterns, restoring coordination. And then what I like to talk about a lot is load capacity. So ultimately, we want to look into increasing load capacity. So in my opinion, if we don't address those things, the athlete is very likely to relapse. So as far as how the chiropractic is involved in modern sports, we play a piece of that. We're not everything. Um, but as far as the soft tissue, the joints, the movement and coordination, our education does give us that broad view of understanding all those things. And certainly through education, we're going to fine tune that in certain directions. For me, I use a lot of strength and conditioning principles to tie that into the passive care and the adjustments and things like that. So, like I said before, trying to work at increasing their overall capacity for their sporting events and
This is
practice
one
and
of
things
the
like that.
things I think, Dr. Keys, that really makes chiropractic so helpful in the world of sports. And you said it very succinctly, which is collaboration. You got to be on the field, and for most team sports, there's no I in team, which means that this is about bringing together the best of the best to work together and celebrate the best resiliency program for the patient because they're there for performance, they're there for planning their game, and then they're there for recovery, and you're hitting all those peaks. You said something before I jump into my next question. Tell the audience what you mean by overload training, because I think this is a very open area for discussion, and I'm glad you brought it up.
As far as like overload in treatment and overload as a,
How do you
I mean,
define, so they get the chiropractic care that they need, but they need more than that so that they don't really
yep.
relapse,
Okay.
or they need that performance to be at peak? Share with us
Yep.
what goes beyond that, just the chiropractic adjustment,
Mhm.
so that we can build them the foundation strong and then maximize their performance.
Right. So when we look at sports performance, the one of the biggest principles as far as like strength and conditioning goes is like progressive overload. So something that we do is over time we should be doing more and more to try to improve the state at which we're at. Same thing with treatments. If I just apply the same treatment every single time, that can lead into a dependence type relationship, which I don't necessarily want with what I'm doing. So as far as overload, in my clinic, we use a lot of weights, or you can overload in time, intervals, distance. There's so many different ways we can work on overload, but our goal is to not stay at where we're at. Our goal is to progressively increase or overload the system because our bodies are beautifully and wonderfully made to be able to adapt and be resilient to many stress. I mean, stress is often looked at as negative, but Stress is the only way our bodies can improve. So when we're learning and reading, that's stress in our brain. The neurons have to change and create pathways. Same thing as our bodies. We stress our muscles, they break down, they build up stronger to be able to take on that task. So as far as overloading on a treatment standpoint, same kind of thing. We use that chiropractic as a real good entryway and a sustaining support system, but then it's a gateway into other things that we can work on stepping their performance
I
in an
love that
overload
word
fashion.
gateway. Well said. See, you're hitting words that really make me fundamentally light up. It's the gateway to optimum performance. That's where
Mm-hmm.
chiropractic. We often bring them in when they're symptom based. And that's
Yep.
really dysfunctional because in order to really have an ideal situation, you don't want to be broken to be fixed and then have to go
Mm-hmm.
into the next function. um, I would love for you to share with us what separates symptom-based care from functional-based care in athletes.
Yes, great question. And it is, I think, has to be one of the biggest issues. I know I went through that with like through school and in practice early on. Like it's so easy to lean into symptom-based care. Someone comes in, okay, let's take care of that, and then it's gone, they're good. Versus a function-based care is like you got to know a little bit more. You got to understand function, and it's a lot of that is not going to line up with what the patient is saying because you have to be able to see what you evaluate, see, retest, and those kinds of things. Symptom-based care, like I said, is does it hurt? How much? Follow-up sessions. Does it hurt? Is it less hurting? You know, we're basing it off pain and symptoms, which can often be misleading. I'd say more often is misleading. And as patients just aren't great at describing what they feel, which is fine. But since everyone's going to describe the same thing differently, we have to have ways to objectively look at it or understand optimal function and then work towards something like that. Function-based care, which would be where I reside, is more along can the system tolerate what we're asking it to do? And that is the whole thing with sports. Can this system tolerate the high level of running, jumping, cutting, kicking, swinging, throwing? Can the system tolerate that? And if not, then we're in an area where we're increasing the risk of injury. And then the whole injury cycle happens. And once we get into injury, then we're more likely to have another injury based on that. So when we look at that, it removes, it keeps the symptoms there because we want the patients to know that what they're saying doesn't matter. But as part of the piece of like, when we're progressing them, did their pain increase? Is that something that I was expecting? Was that too much along the overload principle?
Right.
I expect that to increase. I expect it to be like, okay, this is probably going to get a little bit worse. That's part of the tissue healing and changing and adaptation. So symptoms are definitely worth listening to. And so I don't want that to come across like we don't care what the patients are saying because obviously they're experiencing it and they come to us for pain. So we want to take care of that initially. But an athlete can be pain-free and still not be ready. And so that's a
Yeah.
big issue with care and rehab. And it's generally not the athlete that is allowing themselves to get back in there. But if we're too symptom focused, that'll allow practitioners to get into the place where they're like, oh, they're no pain. The range of motion looks good. They're ready to play. And that's, again, if we're just that simple on it all the time, then that can lead us into an increase in risk of injury, and then re-injury happens. So when we look
Yes.
at the functional based care, we're looking at movement quality, coordination, load tolerance, fatigue response. It's all these things together as a part of that overload, as a part of, the increasing difficulty and complexity of the rehab as it goes forward. But again, if we're not restoring these things, pain relief is going to be temporary and we'll likely be in the same spot, or more likely to be in the same spot again.
Sure. And I appreciate that you said a couple things in there that the average consumer who thinks of themselves as a weekend warrior, and yes, we love our weekend warriors. You don't have to be a professional athlete like Dr. Keys treats right now. We love our professional athletes. We also love our weekend warriors and anybody in between. But please do call yourself an athlete. If you're working out and you're getting movement, then you're an athlete. And we love
Yep.
that you're moving and that you're trying to do your best to keep engaged and optimize your own performance machine. One of the biggest mistakes, however, that many athletes can make is in their recovery. And they often, because it's such a stress based environment where you and I, who a weekend warrior, could say, yeah, I'm going to take the weekend off. A lot of times that's not the case. So, what do you think, Dr. Keys, is the biggest mistake you see athletes make when they're recovering from an injury?
I think, and this will relate kind of back to what I just was talking about, equating that feels better with is better.
Okay.
And so I think that I've seen that, in the treatment rooms, many teams is like if they think they're better, but we're still treating on a function standpoint. And I think that's where communication comes in and that whole integrative approach, like I talked about early on, how it's so important to have that, nice communication in through all that stuff. So I think being able to set the expectations when we're dealing with athletes that just because you feel better, it's not necessarily better. It certainly can. There are certain situations where that is true. Um, but I think that's a big one. Another, I'd say, again, returning to sport too early. That's just going to be along the lines, I think, when you feel the symptom-based care. And when we also look at over like too much emphasis on passive modalities, and I'd say I don't want to like out certain modalities or anything like that, but just in general and passive, whether that's, ice, tape, compression, what name the device, whatever it is, which doesn't discount the benefit that those things can do. But if those are the things that we attribute healing and restoration to, then those are going to be the things that we become over reliant on. And again, that doesn't lead into that overloading and that stressing and that increasing capacity that we like to see. Another big area, and this is probably, I mean, this goes across everything, but avoiding movement instead of,
Right.
retraining it or getting into it. We're going to see, I mean, research, and I don't have the specific references, but as far as I know with ankle sprains, the earlier you can introduce range of motion and weight bearing movements, the quicker the recovery is going to happen. It goes back to that stress principle we were talking about earlier. Our bodies are going to be able to accommodate to stress and adapt to that stress. But if it doesn't have stress, then it's not going to be as quick to try to deal with it. So
Sure.
I think trying to, quickly mobilizing everything, I think that's a big issue. Um, but, a big part of that is just most injuries just don't reoccur because they're bad luck, so they recur because the capacity wasn't rebuilt. And that's the one thing I just keep going back to. So a lot of these things are just causing athletes to either get back in too soon or have a false sense of security that they're going to be fine going back in because their pain has dropped down.
Yeah, it does. It kind of reminds, I know we're talking about soccer and the biggest
Mhm.
world event ever seen in the history of sporting. And that's an exciting thing that FIFA is going to pull off, and soccer players particularly, because it's an agile sport and you have to have good stability, mobility, flexibility, and then the muscle training that goes with how they're going to be. And one of the pieces for the book that the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress looked at in the chapter on movement was how are we addressing all of those pieces, because if you go back too soon, or if you think that mobilizing it right away and then not recognizing that in often many cases, the worst thing you can do is stop moving. And that
Mhm.
seems counterintuitive. So having a healthcare provider such as a chiropractor, and there's all sorts of fantastic collaborators with us, the athletic trainer that's on the field, the orthopedic surgeon that might be out there, people that are constantly in the trenches with the patient to say, let's look at the return to sport progression. and how we can get them back to play so that we
Mhm.
don't revisit these injuries. So I love that you brought it home and you continually showcase that this is not about pain. This is about function, and the structure and function need to work really well together and align. When you go into a specific sports like soccer, what are some of the things that you keep in mind for a soccer player that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily bring into the training room for other sports?
That's a great question. It's obviously ankle injuries, lower body injuries is going to be so important for those guys, girls. But like, I think one of the areas that is often overlooked is more the mid and upper back based on the position that they're in. I tend to see a little bit more flexion in the defending players because they're dropping down to sit back more. Attackers a little bit more straight up because they're going forward. But if we're looking at a position that is not able to rotate well, that's going to decrease overall performance as far as running is concerned. So I think it's so easy to think, okay, it's soccer or football. They're using their legs. Let's focus on the legs. It's got to be a leg thing. Hey, if they're not using their arms to run, which I know a lot of them don't do when, especially when they're dribbling, but if that is something that gets carried over to how they always run, then we're missing a huge portion of our rotation and athletic capacity to rotate through the torso, use the huge strong lats, the obliques, like all the thorax muscles are extremely important. When I get into running and training patients with sprinting, I always address the arms first. Wherever the arms go, the body will. So if we can create a lot of strong and powerful movements with the arms, those legs and hips will go with. So I think that is going to be an area that I don't think a lot of people really get into when they are talking about soccer. But with along those lines, I dive a lot into hip mechanics and hip function with soccer, just because, yeah, the lower body stress is immense. But keeping feet and ankles mobile because they're stuck in those tight boots for so many hours, and it's getting those to open up and those joints to express other movement versus just being stuck in a tight boot is really
Sure.
important as well.
You said a couple things when I look back over it. First, I love that you brought up that this is not you're playing a sport, but you're not just the mechanical joint that plays the sport, like the foot.
Mhm.
Okay, there's a whole body attached to that, and that's why whole being care is such an incredible aspect of what chiropractors have done from the very beginning 132 years ago. And you just brought it back so beautifully, almost like a musical instrument. You're playing a part in a chorus, but the chorus is not just the trombone and not just the flute. It has all the other pieces that go and coordinate for this symphony of movement, agility, and proprioception. And I love that you brought that up. The other piece of the sport, especially as you talked about running, is there is a ball, and that ball can be headed. Tell me a little bit about your experience with heading the ball in because you see it. I mean, the massive amount of agility that it takes to run, stop, head a ball, and then the impact that it has on the player. Share with our audience a little bit of what
Mhm.
you've seen and how the impact on the head can be one
Yeah.
piece of it.
Okay, definitely. And I come from a hugely American football background. I played college football, very violent, loud, aggressive. So whenever anyone thinks concussion, they're like football, definitely. And we see a lot more in soccer. Um, it just doesn't look as violent because typically it's just, yeah, like a header. But they put an extreme amount of force into that. And sometimes they collide with each other. But those balls are not soft. They're very hard. And the amount of force and how fast they're coming at them to be able to whip their necks, lots of neck injuries, lots of concussion. I'd say more mild grade concussions, mid grade concussions, unless there's like direct contact with the foot or they run into each other. But looking into, yeah, the upper neck, making sure those joints are moving properly. I have a big passion into concussion. I suspected I had some. I was never diagnosed though, but I definitely presented with concussion symptoms while playing football. And so with that in the clinic, we go through lots of neuromuscular rehabilitation, supplementation. There's some fabulous things like high dose creatine is showing more and more like influence on how we're recovering from concussion, things like that. But getting into some rehab with the eyes and how the eyes being an extension of the brain, how we can influence the structures of the brain and how that's healing through certain eye patterns and eye movements and lights sensations. So as far as that goes, when I was with Nashville, we had very like segmented positions. Like you had your role, you did your thing, which I think is very important in a team. Just like in soccer, the goalkeeper needs to understand what the attacker's doing, but he doesn't need to do that because needs to be back protecting the goal. When I would be in there, a lot of neck work. How am I going to support the neck to withstand that? And understanding there are certain guys that do that more than others. So looking at how are they presenting themselves? Are there other areas that we can reduce some of the tension so then their body is able to direct more attention to those muscles? And so it's just kind of understanding a lot with the positional requirements and their body types and how their body is shaped and all those kinds of things. But yeah, working in the neck, which thankfully we're very good at working with, that we saw a lot of success with adding chiropractic treatment along the whole progression of all the other modalities and therapies that we had on hand. So
Yeah, there's a nice thing to hearing you talk about watching the team because some team members don't have to do things that others don't have to do. And I reflect on that because when you're in a healthcare team on a field, especially as a professional level, you are part of the team and you have to have the same responsibility as a player. So a goalie does not try to kick for a goal. Okay. Has it happened? Yes. But as a reality check, since we do
mhm.
have adjusted reality here, is that you do have to know what you do and do it as well as you can so that your teammates can also do their job as well. And that collaboration really is the big celebration of why chiropractic fits so well into the sports program and treating professional athletes because we're trying to juice out. In some cases, it's microseconds to be the best. In some cases, it's the fact that that athlete was able to pivot, turn, twist, jump, and head the ball all at once. And the only way that was possible is because they had the chiropractor aligning, they had the functional rehab person, the athletic trainer who is stepping it up with them so that they coordinated the activity for the athlete to be at their very best. Particularly if there was a return to sport progression that they needed to actually be ready to be on the field. And I think that's one of the keys, Dr. Keys, that you've recognized in the various experiences that you have. Can you share a few experiences that kind of make you proud that you are a chiropractor in the professional athlete world that you've treated now that made you kind of smile and go, gosh, I am really glad that I became a chiropractor?
I'll say, and it's probably not so much a treatment thing, but the relationships that I made with not only like the athletic trainers and physical therapists and coaches that I interacted with, but the players too. And it goes a little bit deeper into than therapy does. And some of the guys I still talk to, and it's hard to talk about just because it's like those are the things that I really miss is being able to like be with those guys and like talk with them and we figure out what's going on in their lives. That does circle back into therapy because that builds a rapport.
Yeah.
Like they know I see them as a person. In elite sports or in sports in general, it's really easy to see these athletes as bodies that are doing a task. And so I know it can be easy for them to be viewed as just a replaceable person. When I see them, I want them to know they're like seen and like that what I'm doing is because I care for them I'm not doing it just because I have this title. Yes, I have the title and I have the ability and the blessing to do that, but I want them to know that this care is me trying to express the gifts that God's given me to help them do their thing. Um,
Well said.
and so I kind of
Yeah.
went on a little tangent there, but yeah, just get a little emotional thinking about that just because those, those, it's really cool working with professional athletes, and I understand they're people too, but some of the connections you can make when you're helping someone along the line of pain and healing, and working
Yeah.
through their blood, sweat, and tears of what they're going through. Um,
I think it's really important that you recognize, and many may actually forget, that these are human beings doing a job that most people could never even dream of in performance level, and the stress that comes with that job, and then using their body as a functional machine. And that's really, like, I've seen so many athletes training over the years, and especially in football. I mean, because you take them from the field, there's head trauma involved. And the more and more research we get on head traumas, the more we start to reflect that the job is not just physical, it ends up being mental too. And that mental health aspect of it needs to be propped up and needs to be built to the person and the professional healthcare provider, so that it's not seen as a weakness, but it's seen as a strength. And that your mental health and the ability for people to see you as a person and not a machine is so
mhm.
incredibly important. So what you said is deeply spiritual, as well as
Mhm.
helping them be their best and hoping for their recovery, but also being there watching and learning that they have families behind them, they
Yep.
have loved ones behind them, and they have fans behind them. And all three of those only see one portion of this athlete, which is performance. But that athlete comes with maybe little teeny babies. I just talked to an athlete who has three triplets, and, they're 18-month-old triplets. And he's like, I'm trying to get my sleep, but this is really hard. So it makes
Yeah.
me smile. And I thank you for bringing up such an important and incredible piece to the ability for a healthcare provider to really be spot on and carefully crafted in their ability to treat the patient, because it's not one thing. They need to be really finding the trust with the athlete to create this level of optimized performance. What, Dr. Keys, since you've been in doing this now and you've had such a wealth of experience, what is the one key takeaway that you hope our listeners remember from this conversation today?
Yeah, I think I want to go clinical and then more broad stroke. With clinically, I just think understanding the whole body. I know you talked about it a little bit ago, when if we key in on one area, we miss the whole thing. Um, and oftentimes, if we're not evaluating the entire body, we can miss something that's just being presented somewhere else, the weakest link, right? I see so many times where an injury will come in and be like, well, yeah, it's because it's not there because this is causing you to push stress there. I think that's a big thing for clinicians, practitioners to understand, or at least to consider. I by no means have all the answers, and I'm still learning and trying to get better. On a more broad sense, I think it is kind of what we just talked about was we can't let our numbers, as speaking as clinicians, our numbers or our status or our credentials to put us at a point where these athletes and patients are a number. We need to make sure that they're recognized and known and that they're cared for and that we want them to be better. I it it's just a big thing for me and like how in practice here we're so relational. Just like I mean, I don't need to know their private stuff, but it's like we interact, we talk, we trust each other. And as far as a team, trust is the base. You can't trust each other. I just don't think there's a proper foundation for the relationship, for the progression. Because when I need to have a hard conversation with the patient, they need to trust that what I'm saying is what I really mean and not just trying to influence them to do a decision that they may not need. So just being able to see each other and work on trust. Yeah.
I love that word because it goes for many parts in our life, is
Mm-hmm.
trust and creating the ability for maximizing the relationship and trust that, the top coach isn't saying, just get him back on the field. And your gut saying, he's not ready. She's not ready. And knowing that if you're pushed to the wall like that, the patient will look at you and they will know that they trust you. Trust is something you cannot
Yeah.
manufacture. It's built, it's created, and it develops because you're a healthcare provider who truly cares from the bottom of their heart. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on today and really helping ChiroThon be a strong place for people to learn, trust the information and not get it from Dr. Google, but know that healthcare providers such as yourself, a chiropractor on the field treating professional athletes, have their whole being care in mind, and that we don't treat you like a number. We treat you as a person. So thank you, Dr. Kees, for being an outstanding practitioner and, more importantly, a fellow of chiropractic that is doing the best they can to ensure the athletes are getting maximum and optimized performance. Thank you for being on ChiroThon 2026 today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I'm pumped to see how the other presenters are, and this is such a great thing. And so thank you so much for putting this on and putting back into the profession. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
What an incredible day.
Incredible.
Incredible. It's the wrap-up day of ChiroThon 2026. We had such an incredible lineup of speakers today, but I hope that you've enjoyed them so much you're going to come back.
And I gotta tell you, I'm super proud. I think today went amazing on multiple levels, but the donations were phenomenal. We're currently sitting at 22,340. We're almost, 7,000 plus away from our goal. That wouldn't have been possible without you guys, without sharing, without being here with us. Remember that every single one of these dollars helps families and people stay off of drugs, make sure they have a drug-free healthcare, and more importantly, to have a better life. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Central Time with more guests. One of my personal mentors, Dr. Nick, he was with the 49ers, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. And I can tell you that tomorrow morning, if you can be with us, be present, be ready, share this tonight, share the last, 4, 5?
Yeah, 5 vignettes.
5 vignettes, and more importantly, the past few years with any friends of yours that are looking to have a better life. Share any things you want to say last?
No, I just want all of you to recognize that you coming in and sharing with us is really the circle of love. It's being able to understand where we are, understand where we can go, and then build everyone around you in your community. Because after all, this is a community, and we can do this together if we put our time, our talents, and our wisdom together. So please be with us tomorrow. We start at 8 a.m. Central Time. That's a little early for our Pacific friends. So if you're watching from California, which I know you are, you're going to get up a little bit earlier to see us tomorrow. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we shall see you tomorrow.
And thank you to all of our team behind the scenes.
Oh, yes.
Because this wouldn't
Couldn't
be possible
do it without our
them.
dream team. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And our sponsors, so we will see you tomorrow.